basically outsource solutions for business areas in the area of operational accounting and finance. They also provide interim and permanent placements for CFOs, controllers, and other accounting staff. Now CFO is about 15 years old, and it is a nationwide firm with 23 partners across the country and 13 different states. Julie, who's with us today, is a partner with Now CFO in the Fort Worth market. She is a CPA with over 30 years of accounting experience and a CFO who has, she said, been licensed for 25 years. Basically, she is here to help provide services that fit everyone's business needs and budgets and strategies to achieve greater visibility in finances. So with that, I was going to let her say hi, and then we're going to let everyone introduce themselves and what they want to get out of this webinar. So, Julie?
Hi, thank you, Alicia. That was such a great introduction, and I just wanted everybody to know I'm kind of glad it's a smaller group so it can be interactive. I'll do my best to share with you what we're doing as a firm during this pandemic and how we're trying to help our clients, coworkers, partners, even friends and family members. Just how do we get through this and stay on solid ground and go forward into what we're calling a new normal or a temporary normal. So I would love to hear from your introductions, why you hopped on, what you might hope to gain from it. And I'm going to do my best to share with you high level, then go into some detailed questions. And I'd love for it to be interactive. Thank you for inviting me.
Yep. So if you have specific questions that are private, you can just message me in the group chat or Marianne, and we'll make sure that we get Julie answering those for the group. But we're going to unmute you all, and then you can just popcorn and tell us why you're here today. Okay.
Hi, Julie. Rhonda Windsor here. How are you? I'm with Western and Southern Life and Western and Southern Brokerage Services, and I jumped on the video, the Zoom call today to kind of see how other businesses are handling and weathering this whole COVID storm. You know, I work a lot with small business, and I'm hope to gain some insight into how I can better be a resource for those businesses.
Thank you, Rhonda. Who would like to talk? Just raise your hand. Vaughn?
Yeah, I'm Vaughn Bucher with McAdams. We're a professional design firm, and we assist landowners realize their visions for the future of their land. We have land surveying, landscape architecture, civil engineering, and land planning. And the thing that caught my eye about this webinar was how long will you stay in compliance with the PPP loan forgiveness? You know, I know that McAdams was fortunate enough to be in on the first round. And so we've got that in process if it's not already, and it's happening out of corporate, so I'm not familiar with the terms of it. But, you know, at one point it had something to do with your payroll had to be the same at the end of this when in order to be forgiven. And then recently I've heard maybe it's just 75% of what it was a year ago in order to be forgiven. So I just wanted to, it's always good to have as much information as possible, and that's what piqued my interest.
Thank you, Vaughn. That's a good question. I'm sure she'll get to that. Marianne Henderson, did you want to go? And then Barb?
Sure. I'm Marianne Henderson with iOffice. We're an independent company out of Decatur, Texas, that deliver office supplies, essential office goods right now especially has been huge. We do office furniture and things like that. So schools, healthcare markets, those are part of our clientele, as well as the businesses in the chamber. We did apply for the SBA loan with our local bank. Legend Bank was able to get that through to us. We got the money much faster than we ever dreamed we would actually have it in the bank. It was a big surprise. So now our focus is to make sure we utilize that correctly, so we get it forgiven, as the program was shared to be the purpose. So that's what we're here for, to get more information.
Great. Barb?
Good morning. I'm Barb Walker. I'm with EECU Credit Union. We're a full-service local credit union. And very similar to what Marianne and Vaughn said, that was very why I wanted to hear your presentation. There was a lot of topics, but that one in particular was of interest in these, trying times that we're all going through. If
Okay.
by chance I have to drop, I have another urgent project I'm working on, I'll just say that. I hope that's not the case because I'm very interested.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thank
Who
you.
else would like to introduce themselves and give us something you'd like to take away from today's webinar?
I will.
Okay.
So I'm Suzanne Van Spybrook with Cruise Planners, Not Just Cruises. And the travel industry certainly been hit super hard and for quite a long time. And I'm just trying to get a feel for how other businesses are feeling and dealing and just the state of the economy moving forward in Texas specifically.
Okay. I think I see, you have to forgive me how to pronounce your name, but it's Torbia?
Taribia.
Taribia. Okay, sorry. Welcome and tell us what you would like to get out of today's webinar.
Well, we are a branding marketing firm. So, we're looking to see how we can market others, through the marketing aspects of our magazines. We have several publications. So I want to see what we need to do, anything different, exactly what we're doing. So yeah, I'm anxious to hear what she'd have to say today.
Okay, great. Yu Chin, you're next.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yu Chen from Team Logic IT. Hi, Julie. What I'd like to take away from today is that Team Logic has been one of the lucky ones who've got our PPP approved, and so we've got money in the bank, and what moving forward is, I think, like most people, is how to manage and keep track of the expenditures so that we know that we can be correctly and fairly forgiven for the amount that we spent on the expenses that we should. But one thing that I'm not too sure of is the payroll taxes, which is it's been mentioned in the CARES Act that employers can sort of have like a payroll tax holiday, and we are allowed to pay back the payroll taxes that during this period in the following 2 years, 50% in 2021 and 50% in 2022, which I believe that's correct. But I've also read somewhere that if you have your PPP approved, then you can't do that. So I just need some clarification on that point.
It's a great question, and I'm sure Julie will get to that. Okay, so anyone else like to say anything? I don't want to take away Julie's time and question and answer at the end.
So this is Michelle Allen with Lucas Funeral Homes, and I don't have as much in-depth viewpoint that everyone else has expressed, but mine is more just to try to stay current and as educated as possible, because it seems like even after we finish this webinar, 2 hours from later, another announcement comes out and it changes. So I'm just trying to stay abreast on, it's constantly moving. And so just listening and just trying to learn overall.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Marianne is also on the call with WeatherEd with the Metroport Chamber. She is my coworker. Most of you know her because she's member relations. So Marianne, did you have anything to say before we hand it over to Julie?
Nope, just if there's any kind of technical issues, feel free to message me. If we can keep everybody muted pretty much, unless if you have a question, and you can use the old school raise your hand if you have a question, and Alicia and I will try to field it for you, or utilize the chat as Alicia said. But if there's anything that comes up during the call, you can reach out to either of us that way. The chat is, you have to hit in the bottom toolbar, and then it comes up on your right hand side if you don't see the chat yet, and that's how you do it. And there's the default is to chat with everybody, and that's a great way to put your contact information out there, like your business card, but you can also choose the arrow next to it and message someone privately as well, and it'll show a list of everybody who's on the call. But if there's any questions, just do it that way, and we look forward to it.
All right, Julie, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. I took down some notes. Hopefully everybody can hear me. If you can't hear me or something with technology is not working, wave wildly and I'll do the best I can. I like to start my presentations not with technical, but with the emotional, and I'll share with you why. I'm going to share a screen and hopefully this works. As everybody was talking about the unknown and all these regular updates, that I'm with you. I wake up in the morning and I think, which news channel do I tune into so that I can help my clients? And even presentations like this, I don't want to state something that has changed 30 minutes ago. So we are all trying to stay ahead of it regularly. So I'm going to share something that I think is really valuable. Okay. Can you see the circle with the what do I want to be during COVID-19? Is that what everyone is seeing on their screen right now? So one of the things I like to tell people is these 3 zones, the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. And really, as business owners and moms and dads and friends, it's important to look at where are we sitting. This is new, this is unique. None of us have ever been through this before, and it doesn't matter what skill you're in, what profession you're in. And I wrote down Michelle's name with the funeral home. Kristen Bernard, whom some of you know, can't be with us today because her father-in-law suddenly passed away. And they're experiencing a funeral today that's a virtual Facebook Live funeral. And they're able to go to a viewing 5 people at a time. And it's just such a bizarre period of time. And I know that's a very kind of dark example, but in business, we're dealing with the same thing. I have a variety of clients and I ask all of them, where are you emotionally? Because for you to be able to process this data, you have to at least get yourself into the learning zone. We all should strive to move into the learning zone so that we can end up in the growth zone. So I just ask everybody, this is posted on LinkedIn. A lot of people have shared it. I can't give credit to the right author of it, but I think it's a great tool to look at. So before I jumped into PPP and technical updates, I wanted to share that screen with everybody. So I'm going to flip over, and we do have a presentation. So let me open it. There we go. So my apologies. When I was testing it, I brought it all the way to the end. And I'm not going to read through each slide, but I wanted to give everybody a high level of how do we get toward a step towards stability? What does that look like in an uncertain time with daily activities changing, how we run business changing? And people keep talking about this new normal. What is a new normal? And if you're like me, I don't even want to call it normal. I want to get through each day, be the best that we can be with the knowledge that we have without stress. And this Roadmap to Recovery series is something that as a firm, we've all worked really hard to stay current and create for our clients, networking partners, and friends. So a lot of people are asking, when is this going to end? And I want everybody to know nobody knows. So whatever you're listening to, whoever you're hearing your updates from, there are gradual, you've probably all heard it on the news, each governor's been given the opportunity to decide how their state will transition back and gradually open businesses. And so just like you, I've been listening to Governor Abbott. I've been trying to keep up. I have clients in other states too. So peace of mind in a way is knowing no one knows. You're not behind anybody, you're not in front of anybody, none of us knows. And with the most recent updates I was happy to hear some of you got your PPP funding, your loan approved, in queue. Rest assured that as we're going through this, our government, I believe, is trying to help everybody stay employed and keep businesses alive. I think the quote was 48% of the US businesses are the small to medium-sized companies, and that's where the majority of us are employed, myself included. My practice falls in that. So with the federal updates, it's important to know, this is probably repeat, but I like to share it just in case. The EIDL loan, some of you mentioned you have received your funding on that. That It is very hard to check your status. A lot of people have said, how do I know if I'm going to get the money? How do I know the status of my loan? I will tell you the volumes that they're processing, they had to shut down the application process. 2 reasons: the funding was used completely for PPP, and EIDL, they couldn't keep up with all the processing that they were doing. So instead of have all these people panicked, I was on their website and actually shut down the ability to apply for EIDL. I do believe that's temporary, and we're waiting to see when they'll be opening that up again. As most of you have mentioned, and most businesses of our size, the PPP loan application and making sure it stays forgiveness instead of a loan, we're going to get into that a little bit further after this slide. And then stimulus checks. This is a personal thing that started last Monday, where people were starting to see the stimulus checks hit their bank accounts. I'll talk a little bit more about how you can know if they've got your right banking information, or if you're going to get a paper check versus an electronic transfer into your bank account, or if you even qualify. And then tax breaks. It was brought up in the introductions, the question about the tax credit for payroll taxes versus the PPP loan. And no, you cannot use both. So we'll go into that a little bit further as well. So this is the federal level. And then, as we all talked about, the Treasury is seeking additional funding. That is definitely on the horizon. But really what I wanted to talk to business owners about today was this screen, this slide, the things, what should you be doing right now as a business owner to make sure you are on the road to recovery, that you're going to be on stable ground, that you can get the funding that's needed, and what do you do with it when you receive it? So this is a really high level of a lot of important information. I won't dive too deeply until a little bit later when we have some time for specific Q&A. I think the hot topic right now is definitely maximizing PPP loan forgiveness. That is something I do want to spend some time on in a moment. The other things that are really important, though, are cash flow forecasting. And this can be broken down very simply. I don't ever want people intimidated by cash flow forecasting. That sounds like such a big, overwhelming task. But if you think about your business transactionally and you think about it on a timeline, that's what cash flow forecasting is. So what money do I have coming in from my customers, from any receivables, product sales? What money is coming in, and when am I anticipating receipt of those funds? Then on the flip side, what money needs to go out, and what's the timeline for that? Who do I need to talk to maybe make sure both of those timing of cash is synced up? And so cash flow forecasting and establishing a break-even point are really hand in hand. And I will tell you, there's a slide in here that I was really shocked by the quote. 82% of businesses who don't cash flow forecast fail. And I just was like, wow, I had no idea the percentages could be that high. And so it's important, this cash flow forecasting, and I apologize, I look like I'm in the dark. But the cash flow forecasting is an important tool, and break even and budgets, we'll talk a little bit about that. So cash flow forecasting, maximizing PPP loan forgiveness, and the other really, really important thing is restructuring operations, rebuilding and restructuring. What will that look like? Why does that matter, and how do we do it? So I'm going to continue on, and again, I'm going to move a little bit because I feel like my lighting's bad. There we go. I felt like I couldn't see anybody. Maybe that's worse. Sorry. So diving in a little bit here, this maximizing of the PPP loan forgiveness. This is something that is on everybody's mind who's receiving the money, right? We want to know, what does this look like for all of us, and how do we make sure that we stay in compliance? And I wrote down the gentleman's name. I believe it was Vaughn. Vaughn was asking the question, and great question, was what about this 75% that I'm hearing about? So with the PPP loan forgiveness, there's 2 key things that they're looking at. How many people, how many employees were you committing to stay on your payroll, and the total wage amount that you're paying? That does not mean it has to be the same employees, but it does have to be the same head count. And then, as you notice, those of you that applied to the PPP, there's a multiplier. They took your average monthly payroll times 2.5. Well, we all said, well, 8 weeks of payroll is times 2. They did the 2.5, there's a bit of a buffer in there. And so how you spend that money, if as long as 75% of the funds that you receive go toward payroll, and the same number of people at the same wage level, if not higher, then that amount will be forgivable. And here's a little screen that I thought was valuable is the tracking. How do you track that? How do you make sure that the 8 weeks of payroll, the funding you receive, how are you going to track it? Some people have a payroll system that is great, but as everybody knows, this isn't going to fall on an exact quarter, because when you receive your funds, everybody will be receiving their funds at different times. So it's really important to either have a good payroll processor that can help you pull your records. I tell some business owners a great spreadsheet tracking the payments that you're making, the people you're paying, and the wages that you're paying. And then again, the approved costs. There will be a list of approved costs, just like any loan document that you sign. There are covenants. There are ways that you know to stay in compliance. It's important to read what the bank is providing you. It's also important to keep current with data that's coming out, whether it's through a firm like ours or your tax CPA or your banker. One of the things I tell people right now more than ever, the 3 key things that you should have on your team, people: the attorney, tax CPA or just an operational CPA, and your banker. Really important to all businesses, regardless of your size right now. So 75% of the PPP loan has to be spent on payroll costs for it to be forgiven. Something important to note, that does not include your federal FICA taxes. That cannot be factored in to make that 75%. If for some reason you're not forgivable and you drop down, the percentage that you spend on payroll costs will still be factored into that calculation. Headcount, wage levels, like it says here, have to remain the same. The goal and the intent of this was to keep all of us working. And so I always think, what's the intent of the forgiveness? They want to make sure that no one's taking advantage of it. And then let me flip over. So we can go deeper. I know some people had some questions about that, but I'm trying to respect the time. Break-even point, this is important. And again, it sounds like a hard accounting term, but it really is just matching your income to your expenses and making sure that your cash flow is stable, making sure you can pay the bills, and that as you need to make the hard decisions, such as pay cuts, or maybe not advancing in some of the projects that you had laid out for the time period. I'm going to skip through this I want to get back into cash flow. So the PPP loan and cash flow are 2 things that I'm most passionate about for business owners right now. When things are uncertain, and I hate to give cash the authority of cash is king, but that's an expression we all learn in our accounting 101 classes. And it's true now more than ever. If you can't pay the bills, you can't pay your employees, you can't pay your vendors, we all know there's no way we can get through the business. So right now, more than ever, it's important to track, like I talked about earlier, what's coming in and what's going out. And one of the things that people don't realize with cash flow management, it's not just sitting behind an Excel spreadsheet and running the numbers. It's communicating. It's communicating with your customers, communicating with your vendors, communicating with employees, anybody that's involved with your cash. The more that we all can communicate and collaborate and figure out how we manage it to get to a break even so that businesses can continue to succeed, it's critical. And I tell people, if you've never had to talk to a customer to say, hey, I noticed you're slipping behind on getting us paid, how's business going for you? And I'm in that business. I'm a service provider, and a lot of my clients have had to struggle with cash. So we've had to have the discussion, hey, would it be helpful if we extend terms? Or maybe you could pay 30% now and the remainder later. So cash flow forecasting is not just an Excel spreadsheet. It is communicating, it's developing a strategic plan, it's thinking about the timeline of which cash is coming in and cash is going out. And I've really been trying to simplify the process for my customers, my clients, my friends, anybody that's thinking about how am I going to make it. If we can really just communicate, look at the next steps with our cash, I feel like people will feel a little calmer. And I know right now, I just was on the phone with a client waiting on PPP approval and in line, in queue, and he said, gosh, if I didn't have this cash flow forecasting tool, I wouldn't know what is next. And so here's the 82% of small businesses that I thought, wow, right? So if that's not a wake-up call for all of us, it's really important to cash flow manage. Break-evens and budgets really go along with that. I'd love to be able to see everybody's screen. I'm always curious to know who actually has a budget and do they actually follow it. Some people don't think about it because things are going well, and I think now is a really good time to reassess your budget and forecast what it would look like. Somebody mentioned, how am I going to spend the money if I receive it, whether it's the EIDL funding or the PPP loan? How do I know how I'm going to spend it? And a budget will help you know that. Cash flow forecasting and a budget. I'm going to skip through that. So this great opportunity. People always say there's a silver lining in bad things, and I am one of those people who passionately believes that. So I wanted to share here that this is a great opportunity. Maybe your team wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, or maybe that vendor you're using wasn't the best vendor for you. It's a good opportunity to rebuild and restructure your operations. What do you want to look like when you come out of this? What's your goal? And use this opportunity to really look at your corporation or your business or your service providing firm. Who do you want to do business with when everything is lifted and things are doing better? Some of the benefits here, as I mentioned, shifting supply chains, that's a big one for people. Or maybe discontinuing a product line. Maybe there was something that you were doing that really wasn't that profitable to begin with. This might be the right opportunity to make that shift and change. Last point, obviously, as a CPA, I'd be remiss if I did not talk about financial statements. And while that is not always the topic that business owners like to talk about and think about, you more than ever need excellent financial statements. If you're trying to get a loan, if you are trying to prove your PPP loan forgiveness, if you're down the road, you want to acquire a company or you would like to be acquired, having excellent financial statements that are monthly and accurate, I cannot stress more that this is the time. This is if you can't do it yourself, get a great bookkeeper, get a CPA. There are really talented people that can help you with your financial statement reporting. We are one of those people, but there are also tons of others. I tell people, one of the things I like to share with people, I use the tax example. You can get TurboTax, H&R Block, a different tax software. You can fill out your tax return yourself. You can answer the questions, you can fill in the blanks, but are you really the expert to make sure you've done everything right to get the best benefit for you, your family, and your business? You may be. For me, I'm not, and I'm a CPA. I know I need an expert advice. So I tell people on financial statement reporting, find an expert, find somebody to help you so that you can run your business and be the business owner you want to be, but manage it well with good financials. So again, a highlight on this, and we're happy to share this slideshow with you. I don't like to read slide by slide, but there's an expression out there that is, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And again, during a pandemic, during a crisis, if you cannot manage your financial statement impact, your volume, your cash flow, it's all about being able to measure and manage data. And that's where financial statements come into play. Last point before I hope we have time for Q&A, is building on stable ground. There's a lot of different expressions on that. If I'm going to build a house, it's got to be on stable ground. Same with a business. And we're in a whole new state. We're in a whole new frame of mind. This virtual opportunity that some of our businesses maybe didn't tap into is now there. But again, there's cybersecurity. There's there's a way to do it safely and on stable ground. So any change that's leading into what people are calling the new normal really has to be stable, and you have to think about it. And we all have to think about it in a different way. I'll give a quick example. For me, I'm hiring, even during this time, CPAs are definitely needed. And so I'm still interviewing and hiring, but I have to make sure that these people now have this new skill set of remote work. Are they capable of working remotely and still being excellent communicators and great at client service? So now I have to interview in a different way to figure that out. So I have to build my own practice on a stable ground that I make sure we can move forward. And then growth opportunities and M&A. There's definitely opportunities. Some people are saying, gosh, this might be a great time to acquire or to sell. So I think this next new normal is presenting some interesting opportunities. And the thing I'm most proud of living in the United States is the fact that we're scrappers. Although most of us haven't lived through multiple hard things like this, I do feel like we get stronger, we learn a better way, more innovation comes. And while I wouldn't want any of us to suffer through this, I do feel like the next step, there are some great opportunities there. I'm going to skip through that. So I just want everyone to know we as a firm have created this series, and this is just a really high level introduction. Every week we go very deep into each topic that I talked about, and there's more Q&A, and we've decided to do this as a way to help educate everybody out there. And so this week on, I think it's Thursday, we're doing the PPP in more depth, but I am happy to answer questions, to share what we know. We're continuing to keep current. But yeah, so I hope that wasn't too, slide by slide, but those are the key things in the roadmap to recovery for financial stability, that it applies to all of us. It applies to the travel industry. It applies to the tech, McAdams, with all of that. So funeral homes, we're all in the same boat.
We had two questions. One question for you was about, both of them are about the forgiveness. One is the time frame for forgiveness tracking. And then the other one is, how do you handle the forgiveness tracking if employees decide to leave on their own or they're terminated for cause?
Mm-hmm. So we've had that question a lot. First, on the timing, it's 8 weeks. So the day you receive your PP funding in the bank, the 8 weeks starts ticking. So it's really important. Obviously, you'll have that date on your bank. You'll be able to see when it came in. And so it's 8 weeks from that date. And then as far as, obviously, the intent is not to keep employees that do not perform up to standard. Documentation is going to be critical, just like it always has been. When somebody is let go for cause or they decide to leave, that is business as usual. You still get to have the people you want on staff that's best for your business. However, you do have to backfill that headcount because it is critical. Let's use the example, if I have 25 employees when I file for the PPP, and that's what my numbers are calculated on, at the end of those 8 weeks, I have to prove I've had 25 employees at the same wage level, if not higher, but not the same social security numbers. They don't have to be all the same people.
Did that answer your question, Vaughn? I think that was yours. Okay. And how about you? I think that was Marianne. No, Barb Walker. Did that answer yours about the time frame? Okay. Does anyone else have any more questions that they would like, or a subject they want to go deeper in? Raise your hand or type the question in. Julie, you just answered everyone's questions.
Well, and one thing that's really important for people to know, last thing with the payroll tax credit that was mentioned, that's complex, and it's really important to make sure you get a tax CPA involved with some of your tax related questions, because you don't want to double dip and then have it come back and bite you. PPP cannot be combined with other opportunities that are out there for businesses. It's not like we're all going to be able to take tax credit and forgiveness, and we can't have it all. So there has to be a strategic choice that you make that's best for your business.
One other question from Barb was, what is the documentation required for PPP?
I wish they would come out with the standard form and what they're requiring. I will tell you that the CEO or the board or the CFO, they will have to certify the payroll records with a signature. And it sounds like there's some loose guidance with it will have to be payroll records, but that could be an Excel spreadsheet, that could be an ADP payroll report, a paychecks report. And because it won't fall exactly on the quarterly, it's not like you can use your 941 and extrapolate the data. So it could be your QuickBooks payroll data. There is no standard that has been established yet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julie. If no one has any questions, we can get off the call a little early, but I did want to remind everyone that we have another webinar next week at the same time, and it's how to promote your business through marketing digitally. We will have more things to come for May. We're still working on that, and maybe Julie can come back on with details on some other questions because I found this very interesting for myself. And then we always have every week Coffee in the Kitchen at 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. Tomorrow we'll be hearing from Justin in the city of Justin, and then on Thursday we have Quarantinis at 4 p.m. and we will hear from Republic Services and how this has all changed their business. So we hopefully have content for you that you'll want to click on and come and hear. But Julie, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And for those of you who didn't know, Mayor Sanders was on the call, and he actually just lost his son Wade to COVID. So we send our prayers and thoughts to him and his family, and we appreciate that he was here to learn a little bit from you, Julie. So,
well, I want to thank you for inviting us on, and really, I'm cheering everybody on and hopeful. And if we can be helpful, Kristen and I, we're free for phone calls. We can't always answer every question, but happy to get on the phone and talk through, even if we're just there for encouragement.
Yeah. Alicia, you may have already mentioned this, but are all of these recorded to where if I wanted to show someone else?
Yes, we are recording them. Last week's was recorded in speaker view. That's my learning curve. I mean, it wasn't recorded in speaker view, so it looks like the Brady Bunch, but all the conversation and context is still the same. This week we recorded it in speaker view. We are still working on where we're going to post it. We can email it to you. They're just large files, so they are too large for our weekly email, but we will get you the information.
Mm-hmm. And I'll share my presentation with you, and you're welcome to give it to anyone that might want it.
Yeah, so at the end of this webinar, we send out a review email and we'll attach Julie's presentation.
Yeah, I will send out an update email to everybody who attended today, and I'll send Julie's presentation. And then also, if I'll use that as kind of an update when we have the video posted or the recording posted to where you can look for it. It'll probably be a link on our website, but we'll let you know when it's there and available.
All right. Well, Vaughn, you have a question? Hold on, I'm unmuting you.
So that brings up a point, and I don't know since I'm not on the host side of things. So, Marianne, do you have a record? If somebody doesn't put their information in the chat, how do you know who attended? You just take a picture of the screenshot and you know us all? Or what if there was a guest who you didn't have their information? I'm just curious.
I'm keeping track of the participants, and I'm pretty good at knowing you all as members. Right now, these are just open to members, so we're not sharing. So insofar, so good there. We'll see whether that changes going forward. But so I'm trying to keep track. Some folks did register, and we have them in the system, but I'm basically adding you all to the registration so that we know you were here and can follow up with you.
Marianne is like Santa Claus. She knows who's naughty and nice, and she knows everybody by name. So we couldn't do it without Marianne. I think that is it. So we will see you guys tomorrow at Coffee in the Kitchen at 9 a.m. And we'll end with happy hands. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Julie.
y'all. This was great. Thank
Thank
y'all.
you, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Bye-bye.